Welcome to an informal talk about AMCS, the Advanced Music Construction System. I'm Q. You can find out more about myself and this system at the official website amcs.thirdevent.net. In this collection of videos, I'm aiming to put together enough material for an hour-long techno set. This will eventually be recorded live and aired on the Inverted Light Source show I co-host. The set will consist of 12 tracks, progressively getting harder in style. These tracks are split into 4 sections, each roughly 15 minutes long, with an intro or interlude of some sort leading in. I will try to explain how to construct each track from scratch, and will likely edit out any boring bits or excessive waffling. Hopefully this will help gain insight into how AMCS works and how powerful the live performance aspect is. The Yamaha RM1x on camera will be used as a sound module. Only preset upon this are some of the dials are customized for tweaking, and all of the channels are set to maximum. The black box on the shelf is the WW7 workstation built by us. You can find out more about this device on the official website. So let's power on AMCS and make some techno. Welcome back. Yeah, I'm going to do the first track for the set in this video. So the first thing we're going to do is obviously load the template I made in the last video, which hopefully has all the labels in it. So load song. And as you can see, which I explained in the other video, the lock has come on, which will prevent me from editing, but this is for playback, so we'll switch that off and then we'll go straight back into the track editor. We'll switch the labels on in the mixer, and if I move the panel out of the way, you can see all the labels are there. Okay, right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're not going to do the interludes and the intro. I'm going to leave those till the final video. Again, that's going to be a bit like the first video, which didn't really do much in terms of making music. It just explained setting up, and that's essentially going to be finishing off the set. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set the RM1x up with a drum. Now, quirk about AMCS is MIDI channels are from 0 onwards, yeah? But in the MIDI standard it's 1 onwards. So you have to remember channel 10 is channel 9 on AMCS. I know that's a little bit confusing, but from a point of view of storing data, it makes much more sense. Also, as you could probably see, the channel's able to go up to 256. I know that's impractical on MIDI because you've only got 16 channels, but if you look closely at the channel, there's a R and a C. Now the R stands for root and the C stands for channel. How it works is the first 16 channels are to the first MIDI interface that AMCS detects. The second 16 channels will be to the second MIDI interface that AMCS detects. The third will be to the next 16. And so you can have a ridiculous amount of instruments if you really wanted to go completely crazy. I would recommend not doing that. Obviously, the more interfaces you introduce, the more likely you're going to have latency and probably a load of other issues. Also, if you've got that many instruments, you're probably not thinking about what you're going to use anyway. I personally think, I know this is cliche, restricting yourself a bit does help you focus on what you're trying to do. If you don't do that, you just get lost. I mean, prime example of an instrument which is just extremely capable, but you could just get so lost in it. And I know all your analog heads are going to hate me for it. The Yamaha DX7 Mark I. It's Brian Eno's favourite synth, and there's a damn good reason it is. I've got sound libraries, and I kid you not, I reckon there's about 500,000 sounds on there. And they are all different. They are all very experimental. Some of them are trying, it's typical Yamaha trying to sound like an acoustic instrument. I'm not entirely sure why you would make a modelling synth and then try and make it pretend to be acoustic instruments, when realistically you could probably just hire a guitarist if you wanted a guitar. Obviously a good guitarist would be preferable, but when you use a DX7's equivalent of a guitar, it sounds like a bad guitarist, in my opinion. A modelling instrument isn't for that kind of music. Again, I'm not going to say, it's strictly for techno. Techno is the best thing since sliced bread. No, you can make any music. The same with AMCS, you can make any music. It would take a little bit of ingenuity to possibly do classical where it's kind of mood invoked. That's where it gets really complicated. This is where acoustic instruments excel, because the person can just play it however they want, and whatever timing they want. They could be drunk and it would just sound drunk. They could speed up, slow down, like you're going across the ocean or whatever. It's just, it's a totally different kettle of fish when you're talking about electronic music. Electronic music is basically, as you probably know, is about the regular rhythm of things. But that said, there are things AMCS can do which will sort of humanize it in a way, because that is something that does suddenly get lost, certainly with grooveboxes like the RM1x. Don't get me wrong, it's a brilliant groovebox, but it's, how can I say, it's essentially a MIDI recorder, and then it just plays back segments of MIDI, and you then overlay those segments, which is great as a sequencer, but how you understand how the notes are being held together and visualize it, I have no idea. Yeah, I know you can listen back to it and go, no, that bit's wrong, and then you'd have to re-record it. This is much easier, trust me. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to set up an instrument. Some of you are probably going to find this scary now, because I know a lot of people moan about diving into manuals and trying to figure out stuff. MIDI. Let's talk about MIDI. MIDI is a protocol. The setting up of instruments is a bit open-ended. Different manufacturers do it in different ways. In MIDI we use a thing called system exclusive messages. They are pretty huge generally, but fortunately the MIDI protocol does have a simple way of accessing lots of sounds in different banks. It started obviously with general MIDI having just the 127 sounds on the program change, but there's a bank change as well. I'm going to be explaining how to put those 2 bits of protocol data into AMCS so that it recalls the instrument. Like I said, I know this is scary. Once you've set this up, you can obviously save that instrument and then reload it in. So once the data's been punched in, that's it, you've done. You can then recall it however you want. But I do encourage people to learn a little bit about MIDI, because it will allow you to open up instruments like the RM1X here. When I bought a DJX to use as an all-round instrument, which is the much cheaper cousin of this system, it's basically a keyboard version of this. I think people say the sound's slightly inferior. I think it's slightly better on the DJX, a bit more punchier. By all accounts, Yamaha, with the AWM sound modelling, they used a lower quality bitrate. I can't tell. Yeah, it's not something I'm going to get excited about. That the DJX used 12-bit and the Yamaha RM1X used 16-bit. I don't know. It doesn't really make any difference. At the end of the day, even if it's down to 8-bit, if you filter 8-bit enough in a certain way, certainly if it's a high sample rate, you just wouldn't really care. It just sounds fine, especially doing techno. You're talking about playing on a huge sound system generally. If anybody notices, good luck to them. Right, let's set up an instrument, and then I'll show you AMCS playing an instrument, hopefully. I've got the scary manual. I'm going to be using this for the instruments, but I've got a little post-it note, a lovely stained post-it note. I don't know what I spilled over it, but it doesn't matter. It's got the MIDI data there for bank change. I've explained this on the website. B0 is the bank change, and then you've got 0, 0 and 20 are then the low and high markers, and then you've got C0, which is program change. When we punch these into AMCS, so I've not created an instrument at the moment, I've just used the one that was default in AMCS, and I've just changed its channel to channel 9, which is the drum machine channel 10 in MIDI. And then we switch to the editor. Now, if we go back, you can see the group was already set to MIDI instrument. So this isn't a waveform, this is MIDI. And everything, consequently, will be triggering MIDI from here. We're in the editor, and the editor is obviously a hex editor for putting the MIDI data into it. It's a pretty standard hex editor. You use insert to add values and delete to take them away. You can insert them wherever in that chain of numbers. The big long 8-digit number on the left, hexadecimal, is the position. That'll be incrementing every 8 bytes. Each of those zeros you see on the right of that is a byte. Now the quirks about MIDI is anything 128 and above is considered a function. Okay, which is why B0 and C0 are above 128. They are the functions. You would avoid those if you're putting in, say, the instrument numbers, which follow those functions. So anything above 128 is a function. That will change stuff. Anything below it is just data. For this one, we're going to do the RM1X's equivalent of a 909. So it's B0, 00, 7E, 20, and then we do C0, which is the program change, and then it's 1A for the 909, as I've got on my little lovely post-it note, if you can see that. Right, so if I go back to the track editor, we should hopefully have sound when I press buttons. Yes, right, okay, so there you go. So that's your drums. So yeah, so that's basically the 909 kit setup, and we're going to be using that for the first 3 tracks. It's not because I'm making techno. You don't have to use 909. RM1X has a load of kits, which are all very good, but I find 909 is a bit of a nice intro into things. I don't know why. I guess if you're DJing, you can guarantee that most of your records will be 909. So if you're going to mix into your music and then you're going to start deviating from that, you really want to ideally start at 909, and then the records will mix nicely into it, and then you can go off in whatever kits you want. For the sake of that, I'm using a 909 to start with. Right, so the first thing we do in AMCS to get a rhythm is if I just do a kick and then I press play, that will just go on forever and then eventually loop at 256 steps. That's no good as a loop. So what we're going to do is we're going to make that loop shorter. We select where we want the loop to start and end, which I've gone from the note to 7, and then we set the markers, which is this button here, 2 little flags. Return is to play, by the way, and then once we play, it just repeats, and that will repeat indefinitely. Right, so I think I said in the other video, you like to have little flourishes, don't you, at the end of kick runs. What we're going to do is we're going to extend this, so you don't have to reselect it. You could just go to the end of that loop, hold shift, and then you can extend what you've selected. For sake of this loop, we're doing it to 1F. And again, if I press play, they'll just play one kick and then come back round slower. But obviously we want that to happen more rapidly. So we go at 8, at hex 10, and at 18, and then we go. Yeah, so there you go. You've essentially got your 4/4 there. So to have the flourishes, you can then say add a kick there. As you can see, you can just change the flourishes however you want whilst it's playing. You're not restricted. I'm going to do the usual done. You got that, yeah? But, I mean, that's a bit... no dynamics there. It's a bit just like stomp, that's it. So we want to change the velocity. If you look at AMCS, this is where it's a bit like Tracker. You've got, for every block that's punched into this loop, you can see the note by the visual graphic. But at the top here, you've got 4 numbers on the panel. Now the first one is the function. One is obviously note on, or note trigger. Your second one is instrument. Obviously we're using the first instrument because this is the kit we've just set up. 36 is the middle C, or the starting C on a keyboard. And then 255 is the velocity. Now MIDI doesn't do 255, but AMCS works that out, halves it, so it fits the MIDI standard. The reason why it goes up to 255, mainly because of the way the data gets stored, and you might as well use as much as possible in terms of how it's stored. But at the same time, the audio allows to have the full 256 range on velocity. This just converts it down to MIDI. What we're going to do is we're going to make that a little bit quieter. I'm halving it essentially. So you see, you got the yeah. And I have another flourish there. Maybe make that a quarter. So you got it. Just keep adding stuff. 1, 2, 7. If that note is in the wrong place, if that kick's in the wrong place, we can shift it around and roll it around with rotate here. You got rotate anti-clockwise, rotate clockwise. So if you look, I can shift the note up and down the loop. Okay. See, I can literally shift that kick back and forth from where it sits. For the time being, I'm going to leave that kick as is. And then I'm going to put some hats in. 21 is our hats. Again, we're going to set up a loop to 1F. Where are the hats on here? I should note there are two ways of changing the octave, because obviously on the keyboard you've got light tracker, the ZS, that's laid out like a piano is, and then you've got an upper octave on the next keys up, which is unusual. You wouldn't have that on tracker. But to change octave, your left and right, greater than, less than arrows, they change the octave. The octave is listed down here. There's 3 at the moment. There's 4, 5, yeah, blah blah blah. Each of the drums is generally mapped to a note, so you can get up to the other sounds. Let's see whether I'm going to find another better hat. There you go. That's the sort of hat I was looking for. Bit more of a spicier sort of short hat. That's what I like. Let's just do the basic for the minute. For standard affair, but then obviously we might want to make that a bit more rapid. So double up. We want to change the dynamics on that because that sounds a bit. No, you probably noticed I'm just doing basic 4/4 stuff here. Like I said, doesn't have to be 4/4. You can do some ridiculous loops on this. I'm not going to demonstrate the polyrhythm stuff at the moment, purely because we're only doing the early tracks. The early tracks I'm just going to keep simple. In a minute I'm going to introduce probability to the kick, just so it's got a bit of variation going on there. But I'm going to keep this simple. So now we're going to go to the toms. You start here. I don't know what I'm going to do with the toms, but this is part of the experimental nature of doing these tracks. Is I've gone into this, no real preconceived idea of what I'm going to do, and then it just sort of forms over time. That's a bit heavy. I don't know where this is going, but you have to bear with me. Standard fare, innit? And I'm going to build the dynamics up on that, so we just keep going. Try not to lose myself in where I was with the dynamics. I think that was 127. 063. Sounds a bit square, doesn't it? I think we need a bit of a groove to it. So to make it groovy, do we need to add some special timing overlay which then stretches the MIDI? No, we just switch on shuffle. It's pretty simple. So I'll do that once explain. There you go. And then obviously your skew is a bit complicated explaining this. When you look at the swing timing waveform, it's like a sine wave. The skew will pull the early parts of the sine wave in and the later ones out, if you understand what I mean. And depending on what you've put into the pattern notation here, the pattern notation at the moment is a very basic pattern notation. Using the notation you can make some quirky shuffles. You probably won't ever use it because the basic one's pretty simple, but if you're doing some weird timing, sort of, I don't know, 3/3 sort of stuff, I don't know, you can set the shuffle to line up with that if you wish. Intensity is obviously how hard you want it to swing, so let's make that heavy G. It's a percentage on this as well. There you go. Your phases is where you want the swing to sort of land. So we've got it landing late, but you can have it landing early, if you understand. It's a whole science in itself, the swing. It's just I tried to make it as programmable as possible. It probably would be good if I could make it visualize on the right there. Maybe that's something I'll introduce later. Because we're under a quantize on the steps, the visualization wouldn't be entirely accurate. It would just be a nice looking waveform, whereas realistically the steps would interfere with that being a complete thing. Right, so I was going to introduce some probability into the kick. At the moment, the kick has got flourish on it. Now, let's say I don't want it always to have a flourish on it. I just want it sometimes to have a flourish on it. These icons, cut, copy, paste, delete. So we're going to copy it. And then we're going to take it to the next run, paste it. And you'll see that that's duplicated the top half of that loop. Now if I extend it all the way up to the top, so it's now 0, 0 to 3F, and then change the markers so the loop goes to 0, 0 to 3F, it would sound like it did normally, right? But we're going to start taking the flourishes out. We're just going to make it basic to start with, and then add the flourishes after. Okay, so just go dum dum dum. Nothing fancy going on. So what you'll have is the first half of this will be basically just do do do. Let's mute the just so you can get an idea of what's going on there. I've taken out the tom. That will obviously skew what I'm trying to explain here. You see? So the first half is basic, and then the next half has got the flourishes in. So what we can do now with that is make probability whether it's gonna introduce those flourishes or not. This is where it gets a little bit complicated. You know, I was talking about the functions. Well, the functions here, secrets. These are the function numbers. I'm sure other manufacturers would love to see all the functions because there are a lot. But I'm still implementing a lot and still experimenting with it. Yeah, so we're going to introduce glitching on the marker. This will create high probability that it would loop the first half, and then every, say, 1 in 8 chance it will suddenly deviate and give you flourishes, or 1 in 4. So for this I'm going to say the function is 139 for 1 in 4 chance. What we should have is see, now the flourish has got a probability to it. It will mostly play the first half, but then occasionally it will do the second half. We can obviously increase the probability of that by going, the most is 1 in 8. But because we're looping, we want to make it less chance that it will let it through. So we go 138. So most of the time it'll just be a basic beat, and then occasionally it'll flourish. Now you probably noticed I was mucking around with the mixer here. This is the next cool thing about AMCS. This is how we mix the tracks. As you could see, I wasn't doing anything with the tracks. I just had kick, tom and the hats, and that was it. That's not really a very exciting sequence, is it? I'm going to make the hats a bit quieter. Hopefully not too quiet. And make the toms a little bit louder. Don't think they need to be quite that loud. For sake of demonstration, I'm going to preset these onto the keyboard. I'm going to set up a load of presets. Now you hold Control and then press Escape for preset 0 in the bank. And I'm just going to do a load of them, just so we don't slip up. We've taken a kick out and the hat. We start that way, because this is the first track. And then we'll put that onto 0. And then we'll see how this goes. So right. So what I've done, and it's a bit difficult to see if you can't see the level for the kick in the mixer. Right. So we've just got the tom there. That's the tom line. And then we can bring the kick in. And the hat. You see, that's how you play it back live. You set up all your presets on the F keys, well, all the top keys, because it goes right up to 16 presets per bank. There's also multiple banks as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the first 16 for track 1, the next 16 for track 2, the next 16 for track 3, that kind of thing, yeah. So then I can mix between them. But what I generally do is I build the tracks up like that, up to about F10. I leave the last presets alone until I'm finishing the whole set off, and then I'll mix different parts of the next track coming in into the F keys further up, and then eventually just switch the bank and go into the next 16. It's a bit hard to explain at the moment, but you'll see what I mean. So you get the gist. We've got a tom I think we need to bring the bass in, and the bass is on 50 something onwards. What bass I'm going to be putting on, I have no idea. I've explained a little bit about probability, where the current position relocates. There are other probability things in where you can make individual triggers glitch on and off as well, and I'll probably introduce that into the hats in a minute. But for the time being, we're just going to introduce a bass line. What we're going to do is I'm going to make some spaces for the other drum kits, because I like to have the drum kits all together at the start for some reason. Don't ask me why. I'm just going to leave it like that. There are 4 sections, so four drum kits. 0 to 3 on the instruments is all going to be drum kits. But for the moment I've left them unset. It's just the first one that's set. And then instrument 4 we're going to use as the bass. I will make it 1 because 0 I like to have as lead as well. And I think on the RM1x I've got the dials mapped to channel 1 as tweakable for filters, so we're going to leave that spare for the leads. I may switch that back to the bass, but I can change the channel later on in AMCS regardless anyway. Let's try and find a bass line. I'm sure there's some synth bass here. The trouble with manuals, and certainly when you look at them, it's weird laid out. Right, so I think that's 01. We soon see. 63, I assume that's hex. Oh, it's not hex. Okay, so that 3F. That's another thing you need to learn to do as well if you're punching in data, is convert between decimal and hexadecimal. We've done the same with AMCS. Some things are decimal, some things are hexadecimal. Like you'll notice in the track editor, the function numbers were all decimal. I will be implementing, if you type in a hexadecimal number, AMCS will automatically convert it. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to implement that at the moment, but that hopefully is coming. I just need to just trying to figure out which one's most significant and least significant on this. Right, okay, so we found the bass. Hopefully they've listed the numbers correctly in here. I think that needed to be 0. Yeah, so what you're looking at there is bank change. Most significant is 63, least significant is 0, which is what it lists in the top of the manual there. Not printed out very well, sorry about that. If you get the Yamaha manual, you can see in there. And then program change is the common general MIDI number that you would have normally. Because instruments like the RM1x and the DJX have such a massive instrument library, there's more than 128 instruments, so they had to break it out somehow. Bank changes, basically that. So I'm not sure what I'm going for in terms of sound. FM? Sounds about 80s. It's buzz bass. Dunno, maybe? Does that sound good? I don't know. Push in there. Again, I'm going to put a flourish on this. How this flourish goes, I don't know. this bass is running at the moment, so it just sounds a bit. I'd like it a bit more stabby. You see, I've got the loop selected, and if we click this is chop, and what this will do is it'll add zero velocity notes, and that will tell AMCS to just cut the note off there. We know that's F. Take up. If I make that now zero velocity. So other thing I should say is if I don't have the track selected and I press chop, it will put it where I've got the current position selected with the cursor. Let's try that. That bass sounds okay, but let's try another one. Normally they're banked into types. So let's try chromatic ones, shall we? Oh, we're in the chromatics, I think. What about... Let's try the organ ones. A bit flat. It's got my subtoy though. Am I happy with those notes? I don't know. Could I bring them up? Yes, I can. So this is raise notes, lower notes, and it will raise everything that's selected. I think I'll settle on that one. So yeah, that's It's gone a bit funky. Well, it's not that it's unlike me. So as I was saying, in the where are we? We're in the hats here, I think, aren't we? Yeah. So we've got embellishments here. We want to randomize that note so it glitches. Let's look at the sequence again. So to Q trigger glitch, we can set that to 11. So you probably could just about hear that hat occasionally coming in, going. There's also, I can make those hats variate as well. Variate's sort of, the easiest way to explain is if you've ever recorded something onto an old tape, an old cassette tape, and the volume fluctuates wildly, that's variate. And AMCS does have that capability as well. For the time being, I'm just going to leave those alone. I might vary the ride symbols because that's coming in next. Notes. 41. We're in ride. You can't see at the moment. If I move the panel out of the way, there you go. All your labels are saying ride there. We need to go back. You probably noticed I was using the cursor keys to do that. You can use the arrows up here as well. Whatever's flashing, which you select on the cursor keys, will then be affected by the cursor keys. Just sort of speeds up selecting stuff. But you can use the arrows to select the instrument as well. The arrows are there for a reason. I haven't just put them there for fun. So yeah, I think the rides are up the top somewhere. That's a ride, but it's standard 909 ride right there. I'm not going to do any embellishments on this. It's just, I don't think it's worth it. I think you just make the ride basic. Okay. Might add a secondary one on that, just a bit quieter. Yeah, it's a bit aggressive, that ride. No, we go with that. That's fine. So that's pretty much the crux of that track. I think we'll add a snare and all that. Snares on the 30s. Let's have a my usual stable clap. So you get the gist of that. I've added a clap there. It's a usual staple. Rotating the claps as you saw me do there, that sort of made it drive a bit better. So that's the claps introduced. The misc I'll bring in a minute. Let's set up the mixer again. So at the moment we've got only the basics at the moment on here. So we know that the snare's there. I'm going to set those all the way up from 5 onwards. So we know that 1, 2 and 3 were set to. Obviously you can hear the clap and everything in the moment because they weren't excluded when I set the preset. In order to get rid of those, just do that. Again. The bass line. Again. what we'll do is we'll have the toms as the intro, and then the kick. And then we're going to drop the kick on the third preset, so it gets a bit of space. And then we'll do that, and then we'll bring in the bass line. What did I have the bass line set? 51. Out the way panel. There. Don't think we need the bass that loud, do we? So we've got that break. And then basically just build it up from there. And the next bit would probably be the snare. I snare. 3. And we need to find the snare, which is on. I think I made that quite loud, don't I? And then, right. Yeah, it's all pretty straightforward, really. And this is our ride. He doesn't need to be too loud. Lost the clap then. So you get the gist of how you build the track up with the presets. I guess I could stick some misc sounds in there, maybe? I don't really know. Chords and stuff like that is not my speciality. That's where I generally get Steve to do stuff for me. I already know what I'm going to put in there. Let's put in a pad. Yeah, got to get musical. Well, as musical as I get, which isn't very much. Actually, what is worth mentioning is if you set up instruments, it's worth naming the instruments as well. And you can do this by clicking summary and then just typing in the name of it. We know this is a kit 909. Well, it's Yamaha's equivalent of 909. We know they're blank. This was the bass line. Let's put T01 bass, just so we know it's related to track 1. And this is going to be T01 lead. Yeah, so let's put in a pad here. Got to remember that the most significant and least significant go backwards. Do I go completely off the rails and go with sound effects, or do I, I think I'm tempted to do a pad. 3F. Pads are apparently one, I'm not entirely sure about that. Add another bank. Column there. So as you can see, I can insert extra data. Now I'm just adding another bank because some of the MIDI interfaces don't like sending a concatenated bank function. Don't ask me why, I haven't got a clue. I'll just assume that's, yeah, there you go. Make sure we've split that bank as well. what the MIDI's doing here is bank change, most significant, 63, which is listed in the manual. Bank change, least significant, 3, and then program change. What I should mention, actually, which I didn't mention earlier, was when you do the functions, the lower nibble of the function, which is the second half of that number, should be 0, because AMCS will automatically add the channel to it. This is currently on channel 0 at the moment, but if that was channel 5, that would then become B4, for instance, but you don't have to program it as B4 because it would automatically sort that out for you. Got to try and think how that's going to go. I don't think that's going to work, is that? Later. It's 7F. I think I'm going to find a bit of a better sound than that. I think that's the right notes. I don't know what we're going into there. 29 was... Unsurprisingly, as this is the first time I've filmed something so long, I've had a technical hiccup. The computer recording decided to just stop. The file got absolutely massive, so it's hardly surprising. Hopefully fixed for the next few videos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through what was done since putting the ride cymbals in, because I'm pretty sure that's where the video ended. What we added since the ride was the miscellaneous. The miscellaneous ended up being some atmospheric bell sounds. I'll play it in a minute, and I'll also go through the sequence that I've programmed into the presets. Pretty sure I showed a bit of programming the presets before the recording ended, and saving is also shown in the video doing the preparation. It was all saved the same way, just using the filer and then using save song. I'll play through a bit of the sequence, and hopefully this will give you an idea of what I've programmed in. This is the first track, obviously, so theoretically this is a bit down tempo from what I'm going to ultimately end on. Hopefully a bit of a build up. It's still quite rinsing how it turned out. This is experimental, it can go anyway. I don't really have a plan other than to make some techno. I'll stop playing. So there's your toms. The video should have shown how to punch in the toms in a specific track, and then the kick comes in. Obviously all offset because I rotated it. So you can see, just using this in a real, using this in a live aspect, I can just pull any of the presets up anytime I want, pressing the keys at the top. That's your bass line. These are the miscellaneous that I added, the kind of the bell sound stabs. And then obviously what was equivalent to ride at the time was just open symbol, open hat. That's pretty much it, basically. I can obviously I can just jump around these presets however basically I want. So if I wanted to bring it back to basics, I can. So there you go. That's most of the crux of the track put together. After preset 10, I then go into mixing out of it into the next track, but obviously because I haven't written the next track, I can't actually set that up at the moment. Once I've written the next track, I'll start merging the presets together. Probably be a drop on the kick, and then the kick of the next track will come in. I'll demonstrate all that towards the end of these videos. And that should pretty much be it. What it is worth noting, actually, which I did miss out through the video, I've got it currently on preset bank 0. Now, preset bank 0 was going to be dedicated to the intro. I've saved these presets into the wrong bank, but I can copy these presets up to the bank that they need to be in, which is 1, because that's obviously track 1. Pulling the preset from bank 0 and then saving it into bank 1. And then that's set up. And as I'm playing back, I can then switch up and down the banks, depending on what track I'm playing. And towards the end of the bank that I'm currently in, I'll be mixing out into the next bank and then switch up. This key allows you to go up and down the banks, depending on whether you press Shift combined, as you can see. That is there, the banks. I don't think it's anywhere else. It might be in the event sequencer, but generally you've got 16 presets per bank, and there's 16 banks, 16 presets, 256 presets. So you're not going to run out of presets. And those presets can consist of setting multiple track levels per preset, and then they can be recalled as and when. There's also Automate, which I'll show later on, which allows you to pick and choose whether you want the preset being recalled to sort of fade in, fade out, or just have it instant when you alternate with the Alt key. I'll show that later on. I won't do a full performance, but I'll do a short idea of how it's all going to hang. The set will eventually be uploaded. Don't know when. I'll eventually do it, record it, and then it'll be uploaded somewhere. It won't be with visuals of me mucking around with the AMCS. I don't know. Might have some visuals with it. I'm not sure what I'm doing at the moment. This is intended for a show. If we're doing it, I don't know. If not, it will just get uploaded along with these tutorials. Quickly explain the save feature. I've created a new save other than the template that you saw earlier. That was a new item, renamed it, and it's simple. You just save song like you do with the template, and then that song can be reloaded. Let's save it anyway, just to make sure we have saved it. There you go. So that's that. Thank you for watching.